Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring someone truly iconic from history, Cleopatra VII.
Yes, the last active pharaoh of Egypt, known for, well, so many things. Her mind, her political skill, that presence she had.
Exactly. But we're looking at her through a slightly different lens today based on some fascinating interpretations in our sources.
Right. The idea that maybe her life, her approach, holds clues to what we now call things like attraction or manifestation.
It's a compelling idea, isn't it? Now, obviously, she wasn't using terms like law of attraction.
No, definitely not. But these sources suggest her way of wielding power, her influence, it seemed to align really closely with some, let's say, timeless universal principles.
So, this deep dive isn't just reciting historical dates. It's more about seeing how ancient wisdom, through her example, might offer insights into, well, self-possession, power.
And how that might be relevant for us even now.
Absolutely. We often hear about her as the seductress, but some sources paint her as more of a mystic strategist.
I like that term. It suggests she governed with something subtler than just armies.
Yeah, like vision, inner conviction, maybe even what some would call energetic alignment.
And it connects to those ideas about modern manifestation, doesn't it? Things like visualization, managing your inner state.
Right. Our sources suggest these weren't new ideas, but maybe echoes of teachings from the mystery schools in ancient Egypt.
Places where Cleopatra wasn't just learning politics or her, what, 9 languages?
Incredible, 9 languages. But yeah, supposedly also immersed in sacred rites, astrology, that kind of esoteric wisdom.
And central to a lot of that Egyptian thought, especially the Hermetic side, was that core idea. As within, so without.
Which sounds remarkably like modern ideas about inner world shaping outer reality.
Exactly. And for Cleopatra, these interpretations suggest it wasn't just theory, she lived it.
How so?
Well, the sources say she knew the stars by name, so she understood the patterns, the astrology.
Okay.
But more than that, it implies she knew herself as one. Like she saw herself as part of that cosmic power reflecting it.
Wow. Okay, so that's the frame we're using to explore her life.
That's the lens, yeah. History and this idea of inner power working together.
Okay, let's unpack this, because she wasn't just handed everything, was she? She faced real challenges like exile.
Right, she had to reclaim her throne from her own brother, Ptolemy the XIII, a huge obstacle.
And the way she did it wasn't just brute force, which you might expect.
No. Sources suggest that even when she was kicked out of the palace, she didn't just, fall apart.
She held on to something internally.
Exactly, an unwavering conviction. She maintained the inner state of already being the queen.
That idea of vibrating as a queen, what does that mean practically?
It's about projecting that unshakable inner certainty, that regal authority, regardless of what's happening around you. It's an internal stance.
Like the famous story of her arrival to Caesar, rolled in a carpet.
Precisely. More than just a dramatic entrance, though it was definitely that.
Uh-huh.
Our sources interpret it as a symbol of her absolute knowing. I am Egypt's queen. It wasn't a hope. It was a statement of being.
So that belief itself acted like a magnet, pulling the outcome towards her.
That's the idea. Like modern concepts of living from the end or holding the feeling of the wish fulfilled. For her, maybe it was just how reality worked.
Okay, so if her life was a kind of masterclass in this, what tools did she use? What ancient practices link to these ideas?
Well, looking at the sources, several things stand out. Her use of astrological timing, for instance.
So not just superstition.
Apparently not. It seems she aligned big moves, political actions, maybe even campaigns with specific celestial events, like moon cycles or planetary positions.
Trying to catch the right wave, so to speak.
Kind of, yeah. Acting when the energies, as they understood them, were most favorable to her goals, ensuring the wind was in her sails.
Interesting. And what about the famous baths, milk and honey? Sounds luxurious, but maybe more to it.
The interpretations suggest yes, much more. They weren't just skincare. They're described as potent self-love rituals.
Self-love rituals, how so?
By cultivating this deep sense of self-worth, inner beauty, it was believed to elevate her personal energy, her vibration, like ancient self-affirmation, reinforcing that royal state within.
Okay. And the perfumes. We know scent is powerful.
Absolutely. This looks a lot like what we'd now call scent anchoring,
Me now.
associating specific fragrances with states like confidence, power, allure. Then, using the scent could instantly trigger that desired internal state, a way to manage her presence.
That's quite sophisticated. Our sources also mention temple initiations. Sounds quite profound.
Yes, these seem really significant. Not just ceremonies, but described as deep, transformative experiences, almost like subconscious reprogramming.
You're programming how?
Through rituals, symbolism, maybe altered states, the idea was likely to shed old limitations, old beliefs, clearing the inner path for her goals to manifest. A deep internal reset.
And invoking Isis, the goddess. How does that fit in?
On one level, it's religious, mythological, but the practical interpretation is that invoking Isis, goddess of magic, wisdom, motherhood, was about channeling the divine feminine.
Tapping into archetypal power.
Exactly. Accessing a deeper wellspring of strength, intuition, creativity, giving her access to profound inner resources beyond just her intellect.
So it's this blend, then sharp mind, political savvy, and this, well, energetic or inner understanding.
It's a fascinating combination when you look at it through that lens, yes.
But you mentioned there might be something even more fundamental, a deeper secret to her influence, according to these interpretations.
Yes. Beyond the specific practices, the sources really point to her emotional poise.
Emotional poise, meaning she didn't react like most people.
It seems so. In crises, facing betrayals, where others might lash out or despair, Cleopatra apparently responded with deliberation. She seemed to grasp, maybe intuitively, that emotion is energy in motion.
Ah, so how she felt inside directly impacted her outer world, her influence.
That's the core idea. To command an empire, she first had to command her inner world, maintain that calm
Her
center.
frequency of sovereignty.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. That unwavering inner calm, that sense of authority. And the world, friend or foe, tended to reflect that back to her. It set the tone.
Which brings us to her end, choosing her own death rather than being paraded through Rome by Octavian.
A powerful final act. And even here, you see that alignment with intention.
How so? It seems like defeat, but
For many ancient Egyptian traditions, death wasn't just an end. It was a transition, a transformation.
right.
And some esoteric readings of her choosing the asp aren't just about suicide. The asp, or cobra, could symbolize the uraeus, divine authority, even the rising kundalini energy in some traditions.
So a kind of symbolic spiritual ascent.
That's one interpretation, seeing it as a final alchemical release, choosing to ascend into legend, into myth, rather than die in defeat. She controlled the narrative, even in death.
Wow. So pulling all this together, the history, these interpretations of ancient wisdom, what's the takeaway for someone listening today? What's the core lesson here?
I think the big message highlighted by these sources is that the universe, you might say, responds to self-possession.
Meaning?
Her life seems to demonstrate that when you really embody who you want to be, when you master your inner world thoughts, feelings, beliefs, you start attracting what you seek. You don't have to chase it so hard.
Like the carpet incident wasn't just clever, it was her inner reality made visible.
Exactly. That unshakable knowing, I am queen, became magnetic. It drew Caesar in, changed her circumstances.
And her toolkit, the astrology, the baths, perfumes, initiations, invoking Isis.
We can see them as ancient parallels to modern practices, can't we? Aligning intention, raising your vibration, boosting confidence, subconscious work, tapping into deeper power.
It all points back to working on the within to influence the without.
Absolutely. And her ultimate secret weapon, maybe. That emotional poise.
That understanding that emotion is energy in motion.
Yes, mastering that inner world allowed her to hold that frequency of sovereignty and influence an empire. The outer world mirrored her inner state.
And even her death viewed as transformation, an alchemical release in some interpretations.
Allowed her to transcend defeat, become this eternal myth, defining her legacy on her own terms.
So the message from Cleopatra through this lens is what?
It seems to be. When you walk like a queen, speak like a priestess, feel like a goddess. Really embody that inner knowing you don't chase, you attract.
It really challenges you, the listener, doesn't it, to think about what it means to truly know, regardless of appearances, that you are the source of your power.
And how realizing that might just allow you to, well, move worlds in your own life.